Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this new Fleet Europe webinar together with Visa. What are we going to do? This morning we are going to navigate the future of fleet. Normally with Fleet Europe, you hear about fleet management, you hear about how to deal with your fleet on an international level. Today we will take it to another level. We will today talk about navigating the future of fleet, simplified payments for mobility management. So we will combine today technology with fleet management, with fleet and mobility management. Welcome to this webinar where you can ask your question to our experts by submitting your questions via the chat function in the tool. We will have an engaging discussion with three experts from three different companies, three different businesses. Let me now introduce our expert panel members. First on, Richard Campion, the head of fleet and mobility at Visa.
Stephen.
Good morning. Good morning, Richard. I hope that you are doing well.
Very good.
Perfect. Richard, you are not alone, of course. We will not have a one-on-one interview. We also invited Hawa Dramé, who is the head of mobility as a service at Arval.
Good morning.
Good morning, Hawa. The same to you. I hope that you are doing well. Looking forward to the discussion, of course. And our third guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Dylan Jones. He is the Managing Director of European Mobility at WEX. Dylan, also to you, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, Hawa, Richard, Dylan, we are going to talk about simplified payments for mobility management. Indeed, we see in our industry that we are not only talking anymore about fleet management, we are talking about mobility management. So it will also be an exciting discussion that we will have, because with mobility management come a few new challenges, and one of those is of course linked to the payment transactions and also to make payment for mobility as seamless as possible. But before that we start the discussion, I would love that every one of you can briefly introduce him or herself and also introduce the business that you are working in. And I would love to start, of course, with the ladies. So, Hawa, can you please a little bit introduce yourself and explain also what your exact role is within Arval?
Absolutely. And good morning again, and thank you for having me. So my name is Hawa Dramé. I work for Arval, which is a full service vehicle leasing company. It is part of the BNP Paribas group. And Arval, of course, is a key player in the industry of vehicle leasing. So last year we leased 1.7 million vehicles. We are present in 29 countries where we have flexible mobility offers that meets the needs of our customers, and they are ranging from large international corporations to smaller companies or individual retail clients. And within Arval, I'm actually part of a product team, which is in charge of what we call new mobilities. So we are in charge of defining and launching new mobility products. And I'm responsible for an offer called the Arval Mobility Pass, which is an offer based on payment solution. So that's why I'm here today.
Yes.
And basically, the Arval Mobility Pass is an all-in-one solution for everyone and everyday mobility.
Okay,
So
that's clear. And we also directly see the link, of course, between your role and also the topic of this webinar. Then we go to Dylan Jones of WEX. Dylan, can you also present yourself and WEX?
Certainly, Stephen. Again, good morning. Thank you for having me. So maybe if I start and present WEX first. So WEX is a global company, and as I think about our purpose across all of our businesses around the world, it's to simplify the business of running a business. We do that with software, we do that with payments, we do that with data, and we do it across three big ecosystems: the mobility ecosystem, the corporate payments ecosystem, and the employee benefits ecosystem. Within the mobility space, this is our largest globally. We work with commercial fleets of all sizes. So think some of the largest fleets in the market down to 1 or 2 vehicle fleets. And in Europe, we have an amazing team spread across 8 different countries, including the UK, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Italy, Germany, and Norway. And in each of these countries, we're privileged to be able to work with these fleets, both on their fueling and management of the fleets, but also on their transition to some of the new technologies, mobility, EV, some of the complex topics that are shaping our strategy. So that's a bit about WEX. I've been with WEX for 7 years. I've been leading our business in Europe for just over 1, and very happy to be leading the business along the energy transition.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dylan. Thank you for the introduction. And then we come to Richard. Richard, of course, we know Visa because many of us, we pay with Visa. But can you also briefly present why Visa is supporting this webinar? So what is the activity that makes you say within Visa, okay, this is something that we really need to do in terms of payment on mobility, and what your exact role is within that discipline?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to join the panel today. So I'm Richard Campion. I lead Visa's fleet and mobility team. Visa essentially is a transaction network, and we link together merchants, shops on one side, and banks and issuers on the other side. Globally, Visa processes around 70,000 transactions a second. So we have huge insights into the way that both consumers and businesses are spending. We've got over 60 years experience in card payments, and as a company, we're always looking to bring this experience and knowledge to all areas and all industries. And fleet is a key area that we're focusing on. We're aware of some of the changing demands around mixed fuel fleets, the need for digital experiences, the shift from fleet to mobility overall. And we've heard the feedback from both fleet managers and drivers around the need for simple payment solutions. And so we've opened up our processing platform to manage the additional data that businesses need for their fleets to operate efficiently. So that's in terms of the Visa angle. In terms of myself, I've been with Visa now for 6 years. I started on the merchant and acquirer side, where I was responsible for some of the urban mobility implementations across Europe. So some of the tap and pay solutions that we see on mass transit. That took me more into the EV space, and then I've been doing this role within fleet and mobility for just over a year now.
Okay, perfect. Let's start then with the questions, and to the audience, to the participants of this webinar, if you have a question for Richard, Dylan, or Hawa, or to all of them, please submit your question via the chat, and I will see the question that you have submitted, and I can ask your question to our expert panel. Hawa, first question is for you. I can imagine that you are responsible, or you are working in the product team, let's say, in mobility. You explained already that you have a mobility pass. Is that mobility pass, for example, using the Visa technology?
Yes, it is using the Visa technology. We actually launched last year this offer in the Netherlands. We're about to launch in Belgium and other countries. And it's actually allowing us really to broaden our existing mobility offer. So we use that technology because it gives us access to nearly unlimited mobility options, which we can then provide to our customers. And thanks to the partnership that we have, because we, of course, work with the Visa technology, but we work with a partner based in the Netherlands called Ximo, and they bring also the technology so we can help customers move from managing a car policy really to a mobility policy through that technology. So in the back office, we would configure that mobility policy, set limits for the end user in terms of budget, and also in terms of what mobility services they can use or not. And really the enabler for that is through payment and through the Visa technology that we use, because that's what would recognize, what they call the MCC codes, so the merchant category codes, and that would limit access only to those mobilities. So that's how you enforce the mobility policy at the customer level. And of course, we also do get some data, like level 3 data. I would not go into the details, but that allows us to only produce one invoice for the customer instead of managing multiple invoices and receipts. So it's really streamlining processes for the customer. So
Okay,
yes,
so I already see that working with the Visa technology is also simplifying, let's say, the process for and Arval and your fleet and mobility customers. So that's good. Dylan, to continue on that, how are you working together with Visa within your, let's say, business in Europe?
Yeah, so I think our conversation with Visa really focuses on how we have a shared understanding of our end customers. So where WEX is in the market in Europe, we're in a constant dialogue with our customers around why payments are important and how is that going to change over the coming years. And everything we hear is that it's important because mobility broadly writ, but also just fuel, represents a huge cost to these businesses. When you have drivers in the field or employees traveling that need to be able to pay for these things, it introduces additional complexity, need for controls, ability to protect against fraud and misuse. And then any friction in the payment process has the potential to disrupt their operations. So for our customers, payments around mobility are really, really important. With new technologies coming, whether that's EV, connected car, all of the things that we hear and we get really excited about, each of those things introduces more complexity. So it's another thing that a fleet manager has to manage. It's something that a driver has never interacted with before. So they have to come up to speed without forgetting all of the things that they have to do in their day job. And so understanding how the importance of the payment and the complexity and the mess that comes with all of the change can best be managed is something that we talk about with Visa and appreciate their perspective as they're thinking about how is their technology going to develop over the next several years, and is there an opportunity for us to learn from those things and find a solution that works.
Okay, perfect. Richard, nice words from the two other panel members with regard to your technology. But why is a simplified payment so crucial for the success of mobility in the future? Because if I have now, let's say, a car sharing program, and I have my leasing vehicle, even a diesel or a petrol one, I have perhaps two different cards or I have two different apps. Is that so complex? So I mean, what makes the payment so critical in the success of mobility in the future?
Yeah, I think the important piece is to think about this from all of the different stakeholders that are involved. So yeah, end to end here, you've got drivers, hugely important. You've got the fleet managers, the fleet operators. Those fleet managers are increasingly becoming HR managers as well as they are managing the fleet. All the way through the ecosystem to the merchants, the dealer sites, the company-owned sites, etc. So this whole piece is massively complicated, and that's before you bring into play charge point operators, before you bring into play OEMs as well. So I think where we were sort of 10 years ago within this ecosystem, there's now a huge amount more that we need to take account with. And so when you talk about complexity of payments, it's not just kind of on the driver side. We did some research that suggested that the average fleet driver is carrying somewhere between 2 and 3 cards around with them. Okay, it's problematic, but it's not the end of the world. You have the reconciliation that goes with it. But I think the overarching piece there is, well, how do you manage those 2 or 3 cars? How do you manage the personal expenses when you then have a mixed fuel fleet? What about when you then go outside of the network and you need to capture all of that data in order to keep fraud down, in order to manage VAT? And then the overarching piece here is, how do we make all of our fleets more sustainable? You need data to do that, and you need the insights around your fleet to do that and to take the right decisions in terms of moving forward. So look, very much so is looking end to end across all the stakeholders here.
Okay. Hawa, I would like to continue with you because you are working for a vehicle leasing company, becoming, let's say, a mobility provider. You have many fleet and mobility managers as your customers. Yes. What would you say are the most important elements that you need to take into account when they talk about mobility? What are their requirements to make mobility work within their company, with the link, of course, to payment? Is there something specific that you say, well, a payment method should be like this or that, to make it also efficient for those fleet managers?
Yeah, so what we hear from our customers is first the need for electrification. So we did actually a survey to understand what are the main challenges and pain points for customers to move to EV. And one that come back in a large majority of the respondents was EV charging. And so the question for us was, how do we simplify and how do we remove those pain points? And payment was actually one of the solutions for this. So providing a simple way to access, multiple charging stations with a single payment solution is actually a solution for that. The other one, and which is of course concern from fleet manager, but also beyond, it's company-wide, is to be compliant with sustainability regulations. For example, of course, there's the move to EV that's coming up soon, but we also see, for example, in the Netherlands, that we have regulations like reporting CO2. And how do we provide that data to our customers so they can actually do that reporting? And we get this through the payment, because we get, as I mentioned, some data coming from the payment method that we have with Visa, and we can build with our partner Ximo the CO2 reporting. Okay. And the third one, I would say, evolving behavior. Evolving behavior, it's people, the working from home, policy, people coming less to the office. So behaviors are changing even with new generations. So not everyone would need or require a leasing vehicle. So we need to provide them with different mobility solutions. And how do you enable that at scale? It's by having a payment method that allows to scale the number of solutions, mobility solutions you can provide without having to manage multiple third parties to do that. So that's also one of the reasons. And of course, there's all the trend with talent retention, talent attraction. That's very important. And those are, arguments that our customers like to bring to their employees or future employees, because that managing a mobility budget is very attractive to the employee.
Okay, Dylan, it's very interesting. Already in the title is the word simplified, and also in the first answers that the three of you have given, let's say that everything linked to having one solution or simplified solution could be ideal when going forward with the payment of mobility. Now, of course, there are also various use cases in mobility. So in what way are the use cases impacting also the feasibility of mobility payments, and are there differences according to the different use cases?
So I think so. I mean, I think when we use the word ideal, and Hawa gave some amazing examples of how things like regulation change the needs on the front end. When we think about an ideal solution, I think it would be very easy for us to all philosophically say, wouldn't it be great if there were a single solution, it was a digital one-stop shop, golden key. It was unified and could solve all of these use cases. I think the reality is, although that's something that we can strive for, when you look at the combination, as you said, Stephen, of different use cases. So Hawa mentioned some of the kind of employee benefits use cases with lease vehicles. We're looking at large fleets where transportation is a core part of their operation. It's a different use case. We work with small businesses who prefer to spend as little time as possible managing their vehicles so they can focus on their business. It's a different use case. If you look at all of the different use cases and then layer in all of these new modular elements like the introduction of EV, new carbon goals that incentivize fleets to adopt different fuel types, connected car, all of these new technologies, it becomes incredibly complex to solve for the use cases and then answer the question that we get, which is, what if what does it mean for me if we bring this new thing into that ecosystem? For that reason, I think what we get really excited about in the medium term is trying to understand how we can build solutions, find solutions that offer more options, but then really focus on integration across all of these things so that we can think about, even if a fleet manager or a fleet are using different technologies for different use cases, how do we bring the data together, give them reporting to optimize and make decisions in one place, give them a single invoice so that the management can still be easy as we step through what is, again, a complex, not particularly clear process as we go through these transitions.
Okay. Richard, would love to continue with you. Like I mentioned, we see a changing consumer behavior, and probably with the consumer behavior that is changing, also the behavior and the methods used by the company, the fleet and mobility managers, the finance division will need to change. We are going from ownership to usership when we talk about mobility, when we talk about transportation, for sure in urban city centers. In what way does that impact the payment business and the way you need to serve your customers in the future?
Yeah, I think just before I go there, Stephen, I think just to pick up on a couple of points that Dylan was just making.
Okay.
So I think in terms of where we are at the moment, everyone's focused on building out solutions which can cope with connected vehicles that can manage the transition from fossil fuel to EV. But I think there's also an element that we have challenges here and now, right? So I think it's also very important that we're taking into account the needs of mixed fuel fleets as they do start to transition, but also just the needs of having a simple payment card which is secure, which can be used in a limited range of fuel merchants, that has the spend controls and the single invoices. So that piece I think is key, whilst also keeping half a view on the time horizon out into the midterm. So I just wanted to make that point. In terms of your question around consumer behavior and how that impacts the changing payment methods, I mean, what we have seen in terms of the adoption of contactless across Visa and across Europe has been massive. And I think that the types of digital experiences which consumers are used to in their personal lives, they also want to take into their business travel as well. Contactless levels now somewhere in the 90s in face-to-face transactions across Europe, and in some European markets the use of mobile payments is about a third of that. And again, we're seeing the use of digital wallets continue to accelerate. So taking those types of experiences and moving them into the commercial world, I think that is the direction of travel. So everything that we are developing in terms of the fleet experience is really geared towards taking those consumer payment preferences and making sure that they're possible within a commercial space.
Okay. Are you now saying that the travel space is, when it comes to payment, more advanced than the fleet space?
I think that I'll have to be careful here. I think that certainly the use of virtual card in the commercial space is accelerating. I think we're seeing far higher levels of virtual card usage in standard commercial payments than we are using in the fleet segment at the moment. I think the other element is the number of different form factors that we're seeing. So, people loading different. Visa is essentially just a 16-digit card number or 16-digit number, and it doesn't matter whether that is printed on a piece of plastic, whether it's stored in your phone, whether it's in your watch, in your vehicle, etc. It really doesn't matter anymore, and we are seeing that use of what we call tokens. So, those different 16-digit numbers, we're seeing them appear in far more places now than we used to across corporate payments, and I think that that's opening up opportunities in the fleet segment.
Okay. A question to the three of you. Do you think, and I will start with Hawa, do you think that in 10 years' time we still have payment by card?
Payment by card, if you're talking about physical card, I don't know. We may or we may not. I don't know if in 10 years that would be the case. I see the world going more and more digital. We today offer both the physical and the digital card. I know that would still be, of course, that would not change a need for payment. But I do expect that there will be a lot of innovation in that front. And we see that through some of the discussions that we have with Visa, how they are thinking about the future, how payment is going to evolve. So if that would be a card per se, I mean, physical card, I don't know. We may or may not. But for sure, there would be a lot of innovation.
Okay. Let's ask Dylan. What is your take on that?
Yeah. So my take is we should let the customers tell us what works best for them. And in the short term, medium term, it's important that we focus on giving them new digital solutions, put it in their hands, see if they work, understand what drivers, what employees like to use. If that's digital, if it's in a mobile wallet, if it's a different type of app-based payment method, and that works for them, amazing. But I think I don't want to dictate to our customers what is most convenient. I want to give them all the options and then work with them to do the best thing for their business.
Richard, of course, if in 10 years' time we will still have payments through Visa by card. So will we? Will cards become obsolete?
Look, I think the range of consumers and the range of cardholders that we're catering for is massive. And I think there will always be early adopters of this technology. And I think there will always be people who, there's still an importance of cash within the economy as well. So look, I think it really is about personal choice. But the other element that I think we all have to be aware of is, the role that we can play in terms of educating people around the benefits of some of these solutions. You think about the rollout of contactless. I don't know, in the UK, it was probably really developing 10, 12 years ago now. Transport for London was one of the first use cases, and that really accelerated the adoption. But it was important that people understood the technology.
Okay. Before that, we deep dive into an important topic also related to mobile payments. The topic is, of course, security. A couple of questions from the audience. First question is from Andy Leeden. A question for Hawa, but of course also the others. You can add a comment. I don't know, Hawa, if you see the question, I'm going to read it. You refer to MCC codes. Now, the experience of Andy Leeden with using payment cards for EV charging has been that charging locations don't use consistent, logical MCC codes. If you restrict MCC codes for security, this can block access to charging sessions. Do you and does Visa see that this situation will be resolved soon? Perhaps Hawa to start, and then Richard, you can add a comment.
So yes, that's an identified issues, and we're actually working through payment on solving, and trying to harmonize this. And even with the partner I mentioned, Ximo, because they have a large a large network of charging stations that they can give access to. But I would actually probably let Visa respond more extensively, because they own the technology, how this can be solved in the future.
Yeah, certainly. So the merchant category codes are set up between the merchant and the acquirer, and the merchant category code for EV charging, I think, was only put into effect a few years ago. So there was almost a cleanup which was required in terms of taking the ones which were installed under typically the parking or retail merchant category codes, and then moving them across to the EV charging merchant category code. So I agree, we're not 100% of the way there yet. It's something that we're aware of, and we're continuing to do as much as we can to clean that up.
Okay. Another question from Andy, in line, let's say, or continuing with regard to electrification. He asks, even if payment cards simplify the access to EV charging, the reporting tends to be basic in terms of sessions total cost only. How can we ensure we get complete data for charging sessions, including the kilowatt hour used, etc.? Because of course, like you all also has said, for fleet managers, mobility managers of large organizations, reporting on sustainability has become also more and more important. Someone that would like to go first?
Yeah, I don't mind taking that one. So as part of a standard Visa transaction, you know what you see on your bank card statements. You see the amount, you see the time of the transaction, you see information about the merchant, and there's also a bunch of other data fields which aren't on your statement around the type of transaction. Was it contactless? Was it chip and pin, etc.? What we have done recently, and this was built on some of the work which is already in place across North America and South Africa, is open up VisaNet in order to consume more data around fuel transactions and EV. And so from the EV space, when a Visa fleet card is presented, we will capture the number of kilowatt hours, we will capture the charging time, and we will essentially capture a lot more enhanced data around that transaction.
I think if I could just add to, so Richard talked about the technical side of this. I would just echo, the question from Andy, we hear this a lot in feedback from customers. Like, the space with EV charging is new. There are many, many players in the space. And I think as an industry, we know where we'd like to get to with clean, rich data to help make decisions. But even down to core infrastructure, I think it's a space where we know there's a lot of work that can still be done to get that data to a place that's good enough for customers.
Okay. Another question, and of course, it should come in, is about that super app and the Apple of mobility as a service. Yes. So the question is, for a while now, there has been lots of fleet managers and also operators dreaming of finding that Apple of mobility as a service. But we see that it's not so easy. There are many players that promise to become really that, let's say, single point of contact that can solve everything in terms of mobility with that one app, but they are having difficulties, going bankrupt, etc. And so even though we are here talking about B2B solutions and not B2C, like, for example, a Mass Global that has going bankrupt a couple of months ago, what do you think? Are we closer to find that encompassing solution for fleets? What do you think, Hawa?
Yes, I can take this one. So, of course, we're talking about corporate mobility here. And managing a corporate mobility policy. And again, we used the word earlier, simplifying mobility through payment. And I believe that's what we are doing here now. And we are we are bullish and very confident in the solution we have because it relies on payment, and we can block or give access to really the mobility services that our customer needs, and based on their sustainability goals, their own beliefs in terms of mobility, and also the regulations that comes with to that. It's about opening and closing categories. So it's a new way of doing mobility without having to onboard one by one any mobility providers, but really giving a very large number of options, and limit those options to match what our customers want. So I think for us, for Arval, that's the right solution. We've found to become, a benchmark in the industry when it comes to offering vast number of mobility solutions, and becoming also a benchmark in terms of more sustainable mobility.
Okay, Richard, any insight from you, and perhaps also what are then the main difficulties on that road? Why don't we yet have, let's say, that super app, or that that one mobility app, the one payment solution that can solve everything?
I would love to think in the future that we're going to get there. On what time horizon, I've no idea, and I think it's a brave person that puts a number on it. I think what's going to be crucial to getting to this point is going to be the availability of data. You're going to need insights into how can I get from A to B? What are the different methods? Is it my own vehicle? What's the pricing? What's the CO2 impact of that? How do I compare that to a micro-mobility solution, to a mass transit solution, and then being able to tailor that for all of my needs? So, but that's going to be reliant on, I think, all of the mobility providers sharing data. It's going to be a data play, I think, that brings this together, and then I think payment will just be bolted on top.
Okay,
And
let's talk about. Sorry?
It's very hard. If I may add, it's also very hard to have a one size fits all. Because every business is different. So the more flexibility you give through a wide range of options that you can then customize and tailor to the needs of the businesses, the more relevant it becomes for customers.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. And it goes back to, Stephen, one of your earlier questions around use cases.
Yes.
Will we find use cases in the not too distant future where there is one solution that can solve all the needs? I think so. For some use cases, maybe simple small business examples in our case. But when I look at the bigger, more complex use cases where the additional complexity in some cases is running just as fast as our companies are running with solutions, I still feel very positive because of the amount of interest in energy, bankruptcies aside. The interest in energy in finding solutions in this space is more than I've seen in my time working with these customers. And so I won't put a timeline on it, just like Richard, but I think it's a space where it is progressing, and there's a lot of excitement.
Okay, that's good to hear. One of the things, of course, and I would love to start again with you, Dylan, and then go to Richard. One of the things, of course, that we can also imagine is that people, mobility managers, corporates, can have questions about the safety and the security of payments. We hear more and more about hacking, we hear about phishing, we hear about more and more things around that space. So in what way within your business, with your customers, Dylan, is security linked to payment a question mark or an issue? Is it really something that pops up regularly?
Yeah, so I would think about in this context security in two ways. So security for payments, I think, is table stakes. Like, it's really important for us that our customers trust that our payment solutions are safe and secure. And it's something that we have to pride ourselves in. Security aside, we're also constantly looking at behaviors and patterns of use and finding ways to go beyond the table stakes level of security to figure out, can we help our customers cut down on misuse of the cards or prevent fraud in the market? And there are lots of new technologies emerging that allow us to do that. As we push more payments into digital tools, we find ways to connect more locally to fueling sites or charge points. I think I see really, really interesting use cases coming down the road for us to take security to another level. But your initial question, Stephen, like security, I think is table stakes. It's inextricably linked to payments.
Richard, do people need to be scared? Do they need to be afraid when they pay something?
I hope not. I hope that we've got comfortable in terms of the place that we're at from in terms of digital payments, and then I think that some of the steps that the European authorities have put in place around strong customer authentication, two-factor authentication is only going to reduce those fraud levels. But I think the important piece is you need to segment the fraud. So yeah, it's not just sort of people stealing details and using those cards fraudulently. It's misuse on the card, and so we need to make sure that we have the right spend controls on those cards, be it at a merchant category code level, be it time of transaction, be it maximum transaction size. We have many preemptive models so that we can start to look at levels of, we can start to fraud test transactions in real time. So there's a huge amount of AI powered capabilities, which I think all of the payment companies are deploying now so that we can look at fraud in real time. And then things like tokenization, whereby your kind of 16-digit PAN is encrypted, and then a different 16-digit number that's linked to that original number is utilized. So yeah, when we talk about in-vehicle payments, it's not your full 16-digit number which is sat in that vehicle. It is a token which is linked to that original card. So if there was a problem with the vehicle, if there was a problem with the phone, you can cancel that one token without it being at risk elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another thing, and we can make again the analogy with electric vehicles and charging. What we hear is that if we all charge our vehicles at the same time, or when we all charge our commercial fleets vehicles at the same time at the depot, we can have issues with grid capacity. Is also the capacity, let's say, the network requirements for seamless mobile payments, is that an issue? And is there a solution? Is there a guarantee that if each and every one is paying, let's say, with a mobile phone, that everything can go seamlessly in the future?
Yeah, I think that VisaNet can manage 70,000 transactions a second. I think the capacity is there to handle transactions over and above that. The technology that's based on is incredibly robust. So managing multiple tokens, managing multiple payments, it's core and fundamental to our business.
Okay, perfect. There's a question that popped in. How do you see the future of in-car payments and the fleet vehicle user experience? Perhaps Hawa again. You can perhaps start, because what would be, let's say, your ideal situation in the future? How do you see that evolving? What would be
for in-car payment?
Yes.
So that's a good question that I would actually probably defer to Visa.
Okay. Richard?
Yeah, certainly. So pick up a few examples here. So Visa has worked with a bunch of car manufacturers over the recent past to embed payments within vehicles. And that relies on the car being a form factor in exactly the same way as your phone is, and also then having the ability to authenticate that I'm the driver, versus yourself, Stephen. So you need those two factors within the vehicle. So we've worked on those elements. Then I think more broadly it comes down to what are the use cases. So for EV charging, we have the plug and charge standards. that one I think is straightforward, and I'd love to see plug and charge sort of take off over the next few years. For parking, for tolls, again, I think those are relatively simple use cases that having that payment credential within the car can power. Look, beyond that, when you start to talk about retail experiences, ordering a pizza within your car, I'm not sure at what point, over what horizon, we'll get to that. But that said, certainly drive-through experiences, they can all be powered within the vehicle. So I think you have the technology layer at a minimum, and then it's going to be down to drivers in terms of the rate of adoption and how they incorporate it.
Okay.
It's an interesting one too, Richard, where because we talk to customers about this technology as an example. I think you'll see fleets who they're not swapping out all their vehicles at the same time. And so as they get a new vehicle, they may have one or two or a small number that introduce this type of new capability. And so helping them understand how to test it and understand if it's valuable for them, while also integrating the fact that this new thing is a little bit different from everything that they're already managing, and putting that into one view, I think is a space where we can do a lot to help fleets test and adopt some of this new technology.
Agreed.
Okay. Now, that's perhaps something, Hawa, that you can answer, because you, of course, are in contact with many mobility managers, with many corporates, and they are also reviewing their strategy and their policy with every trend, every evolution that comes into place. So what do you recommend, let's say, a corporate customer, a mobility manager, to do with regard to the corporate policy and mobility with regard to those payments and the evolutions that we are seeing?
Yes, that's a good question. So if I can give a recommendation, I would say, of course, we are essentially in touch with fleet managers here at Arval. But what we see more and more is that mobility is not just the business of the fleet manager, and it's the answer of many different challenges in the business that they need to address. And again, we did a survey recently. It's called the Arval Barometer for mobility. And the top 3 reasons companies are actually changing their mobility policies is for talent attraction and retention. The second reason was the corporate social responsibility. And the third one is also HR related, and it's about employer branding, attractiveness to the employees. So if I can give a recommendation, is that mobility today is more cross-functional. It needs to involve also the HR. It needs to involve probably the sustainability office in the company to have, a concerted way to address those mobility challenges. And my second point is, if before, and also that's our traditional business, leasing vehicles was addressing the 10% employees in the company, more or less, because it will be for top management, usually sales, but not all employees get a car. And so now the thought process should be for the 90% remaining, so including all the employees. I spoke about trends like working from home, coming to the office, changing behaviors, taking less public transport, renting a bike to come to the office. So how do we think about enabling our employees or the employees to use those new mobilities and think through that mobility policy, not just for the 10% with a car policy, but actually all-encompassing mobility policy for everyone.
A couple of questions to close this webinar. Would love to start with Visa. Richard, Visa is also powering different solutions and brands as a white label solution. What is your strategy with regard to differentiation and to white labeling? And don't you fear that at one moment you could become, let's say, a competitor of yourself?
It's a good question. Look, the strategy of Visa will be to remain a transaction network. We will continue to partner with issuers. We will continue to partner with acquirers and merchants. But we also need to make sure that we are also innovating in this space as well. So yeah, a lot of the innovation which I think has occurred in payments over recent years has been delivered by the networks, and I think that's a space where we're comfortable in. That's a space where we have the information and the understanding in terms of cardholder behavior, and that's the space that we'll continue to operate in. More broadly than that, I think one of the things I love about this segment is the level of partnership and the level of collaboration that happens across it. And I think one of the pieces which has come out of this discussion is the level of complexity that we're facing. And as much as I'd love to sit here and say we have all of the answers to everything, you're going to need all of the different partnerships across everyone in order to make this happen. And I think the MAS example, mobility as a service example, is probably the clearest bit of that.
Okay. There is no chance, for example, because you underline also the importance of collaboration. So knowing, for example, that we will never probably have that one company that is offering all mobility solutions, but what we are seeing is that everything linked to payment is crucial in securing the different mobility solutions for a company with the different use cases that also you talked about and that Dylan talked about. So you could say that your role within those payment transactions is becoming more and more crucial. But you don't have at the moment the ambition to become, let's say, that mobility provider.
I think as things stand today, Visa will very much continue to be the transaction network.
Okay, good. Then a question for you, Hawa. Of course, you are known for being that vehicle leasing company, but you are transforming into that mobility company. Okay. How are you continuing to diversify your mobility services in the future? And in what way is payment and enabling also the success of those mobility solutions that you will develop in the near future?
So the way we are continuing to diversify what we do is really always being in the lookout for new trends, new solutions, talking regularly with our partners, including Visa, to see what's new, how do they see the future, and of course, most importantly, also talking to our customers so we can adapt and adjust our offering. So that's essentially that. And the second thing that we also do is trying to integrate as much as we can all our offers, because of course we're talking about new mobilities through payment, but we're also looking at our core business, which is leasing vehicles. And so how do we use payment around the vehicle to make it even a better customer experience, because we provide, tolls, payment to tolls. We provide car wash, refueling, EV charging. And so it's a more integrated solution that we can offer our customers. And the more integrated we are, the better we can service them. So
Good.
that's
okay, clear. Dylan, also at WEX, I can imagine that you have sort of loyalty programs, and that is also part of your business and also part of your card business. How do you see this evolve in the future?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I think about loyalty programs, we're in a really unique position where we're working with commercial fleets, and so as opposed to consumer use cases where there's one individual thinking about how their loyalty through their payments products will impact them, we have fleet managers, we have drivers, oftentimes the decision maker is not the one using the product in the field, purchasing fuel or charging their EV. So I think increasingly getting creative around how we drive loyalty, both by rewarding the fleet managers, our customers, our partners who are choosing to work with WEX, but also using the additional data that we're getting, using some of the new products that we're thinking about to help the drivers, do something for the drivers, help them understand how using our product or making certain decisions around how they use the product can impact them. And sometimes that's simple things like coffee loyalty programs, which we've tried in the past. But I think the potential to do that with more data and more partnerships is great. And then as Richard highlighted, I think like we think about this ecosystem as one built on partnerships. Our business in Europe was built with our fuel cards through incredibly strong partnerships. And so whether it's loyalty programs, whether it's expanding into new value-added services or payment types, I think it's one where exploring through partnerships and hearing from customers what they want, what they're interested in is where we'll start.
Okay. To end, I see that we have still a couple of questions that popped in. So the first one, in the B2B space, many times customers ask to have evidence regarding the EV charge, but distinct it from possible penalties, for example, for the late removal of the vehicle. How can those customers, and how do you manage those cases into a card transaction or into a payment transaction? And are those different transactions, or can it be managed in one and the same transaction? Someone?
I don't mind taking this one. So I understand why some of the charge point operators charge a fee for parking in addition to the charge, right? And I think there's nothing more frustrating when a vehicle is clearly sat at 100%, but is still parked there for some time, and charge point operators need to drive utilization. At the same time, I think from a fleet perspective, we need the insights to differentiate between what's the charge and what is the parking amount. Some of the fields that we've enabled within VisaNet now mean that those two elements can be passed through. So what was the time for the EV charge, and then what was the time for the parking element, or what was the time for the total stop that was there. So the intent is very much to capture both of those.
Okay. And then the second question, if we talk about fleets, is there a need to get invoices for VAT refunds, and how does that info get passed to fleet managers in a digital transaction?
I can, if you want to
go for it, Howard. You go first, and we can jump in.
So it depends. So if it's from the payment solution that I described earlier, so you can get a single invoice for all the transactions that were made during the month. And again, that's enabled through level 3 data that we use coming from Visa. So actually, if I can give an example, you go to a parking, you pay for the parking, user gets a receipt, but on that receipt, there would be a mention that it cannot be used for reclaim VAT because users don't need to submit their receipts. But at the end of the month, we would be able to invoice on behalf of all the mobility solutions providers and report, because we get that data and we know the level of VAT for each type of mobility. So we issue a single invoice with all the mobility categories. So our customers can go and reclaim VAT refunds. So that's how it works. So it's a single invoice. You don't have to manage multiple receipts and submit them because it all goes through invoicing.
Okay. Dylan, you wanted to add something?
I don't have much to add on top of what Howard said. I think other than this being a really important topic for our customers, and evidenced by the fact that I think all three of us were ready to jump on and answer. We know that getting the relevant data and compliant receipts to be able to manage VAT is really, really important. I think there's still a journey for us to go on merchant by merchant to make sure that where we need that information captured in level 3, like Howard said, we're able to get it.
Okay. Richard, Dylan mentioned in one of his first answers at the start of this webinar that, of course, it is important also to see where the technology of Visa is going, to be able to also see how the collaboration can evolve. So, in brief, where would you say that the next step lies in terms of the technology of Visa? What can customers expect?
Okay, a few different things. Number one needs to be security. Everything we do is underpinned by security. The level of threats, remain. The number of threats that we stop on a daily basis, only get bigger, and we need to make sure that people have confidence in their payment solutions. So security, definitely number one. Enhanced data, number two. I think we've covered it in a number of different areas throughout this conversation. And then the third piece I would mention is just around expanding a number of use cases where that card can be used. You can't yet use your contactless card at all of the EV charge points. So we're working to address that element. You can't yet use the same payment solution across all of the MAS opportunities. So we need to get to that piece as well. So acceptance would be the third piece.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard, for your answers. Hawa, thank you for participating in this webinar. Good luck with Mobility as a Service and your Mobility Pass. Thanks for being with us. Dylan, also to you, big thanks for sharing your insights in this webinar. And then, Richard, thank you very much for all the support. And all the best also with your digital payments in mobility. Let's all together navigate the future. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to know more about Visa's capabilities in terms of mobile payments and also payments for mobility solutions, then you can now download the ebook that Visa developed together with us, with Fleet Europe. You see the QR code on your screen. If you scan the QR code, then you will also have access to that ebook dedicated to navigating the future of fleet and simplified payments for mobility management. And then finally, we will, of course, also talk about technology at our main Fleet Europe event, and that are the Fleet Europe Days that will happen on the 23rd and the 24th of October this year in Milan. So please write it down in your calendars, and on our website, fleeteurope.com, you will find more details about the event. Thank you once again for being with us, and I hope to see you in the next initiative. Bye-bye.